Good evening from the News Radio, 1120 AM and 93.7 FM, KPNW Studios. I'm Bill London. And our Crazy Oregon News brought to you by, as always, Sean Sutherland with Ask Insurance. So if you're one of those folks that are struggling with Medicare or Medicaid, and in particular with Medicare, with all of the different plans and different things, you probably have a lot of questions. That's why you need to ask Sean at Ask Insurance. People have a lot of questions, so just ask. Sean Sutherland. He'll be your answer dude. I kind of like that. Answer dude. All right. I do the wake-up call, by the way, 6 a.m. to 9, Monday through Friday on KPNW. It's a little thing that we do where we talk about all sorts of crazy Oregon stuff because, honestly, we broadcast live from 50 square miles surrounded by reality known as Eugene. Okay, so we're going to follow up on... This is one of those kind of convoluted stories, but it has to do with the city of Eugene. Now, the Eugene City Manager last night presented the city's new proposed budget to the Budget Committee. Now, the Budget Committee is made up of 16 people, 8 city councilors, plus 8 other individuals that are from the public, each one of them nominated by each one of the city councilors. So that's the so-called Budget Committee. And as was expected, the new proposed budget includes about $11.5 million in annual cuts, which will directly impact departments that rely on the general fund. Now, keep in mind, this is only a proposed budget. The Budget Committee and eventually just the City Council will ultimately decide what cuts, if any, that they're going to make. Now, this goes back to, if you recall, the fire fee tax that the City Council wanted to just unilaterally impose on the citizenry in the city of Eugene. So now... Well, we'll get into that in a second. So we have a budget hole, $11.5 million a year, every year over the next biennium. And the city's expenditures, why do they have the hole? Because they have ballooned, particularly because of inflation. Then, of course, those one-time COVID dollars that came in from the feds were used to create ongoing programs. Then you have Oregon's failing public employees retirement system, and the contributions to, of course, the PERS account continue to grow. PERS is for public employees. It's their retirement system. Then you factor into that they have continued to hire, that salaries continue to increase, and you've got a problem. So the city currently expects to have about $446.5 million in their general fund for the 2025 through 27 budget. So with the big budget hole Wednesday night, the city manager, Sarah Mederi, presented what she thinks that the cuts should be. Under her proposed budget, the police department, which gets the largest percent of operation funds from the general fund, will eliminate things like animal control. They'll make cuts in the department's community engagement team, which conducts safety events throughout the city. They'll be cut in half, along with its volunteer workers and records department and the like. They'll all be reduced. The city plans to shut down the Amazon pool and the Sheldon Community Center. Mederi said that the Amazon pool actually has the highest costs and the lowest impact compared to other pools. She does believe that there's a possibility that private contractors may be negotiated to be able to come in and operate the pools. The Eugene Public Library downtown location would be closed for 2 days out of the week. That would eliminate 9 staffers, but the Eugene City Manager says that they would add hours at the Sheldon and Bethel branches. Meanwhile, fire and EMS, which take up about 23% of the general fund, will see the loss of what's called alternative response money that was reserved for crisis response service Cahoots. Now, I think we've talked about Cahoots. Cahoots, instead of sending out a police officer when somebody is having a mental breakdown or an issue, they send out a Cahoots team. They're trained to deal with people that are having emotional issues and breakdowns and deal with them. Well, Cahoots, is actually owned by Whitebird. Whitebird is bleeding funds. And so the Cahoots teams, just not all that long ago, basically gave up serving Eugene. And many bemoaned and blamed the city for Cahoots eliminating the services in this city. But actually, it was Cahoots that backed out of the city contract with Eugene due to their ongoing problems with Whitebird. So essentially, the money that's being cut here is just eliminating money that was budgeted for a service that no longer exists. Now, there was no public comment last night, but that is going to come. Budget meetings are going to be May 14th, May 21st, May 28th, and all public comment is going to be taken. They'll finally adopt a budget on June 23rd, which legally has to take effect by July 1st. Now, here's where all this blew up. The new budget was crafted after a petition drive to put that permanent fee tax, which could increase at any time, on people's e-webs bills. And so what they did was they, being citizens, went out, collected signatures, 8,000 of them, to put it on the ballot, to vote on whether they wanted this permanent fee tax. Well, the city had put the cart before the horse and decided, the fee tax is going to take care of it, so we'll put our budget together, we'll call it good. Well, then the petitions were collected, and it made it onto the ballot, but it doesn't go onto the ballot until November. And by law, they have to have a budget by July 1st. So you see what the problem is here. Now, regardless of what happens, what Maderi is suggesting here as far as budget cuts may not even happen, because the Budget Committee and the City Council are the ones that hold all the power. They're the ones that make decisions what to cut and what not to cut. First off, it was a bad idea to do this city fee tax anyway, and particularly the way that they did it. They could have put it on the ballot. It could have gone on in May. They could have campaigned for it, and if it would pass, then the budget goes. Otherwise, okay, now they're going to go back to the drawing board. But they decided, we're just going to do this, and it blew up in their face. The question, of course, remains, what happens if the city council goes with, say, another plan that has been floated? And that plan is to go into their reserve budget, which is generally used for crises, for emergencies, for unforeseen circumstances, and it's valued at about $8 million. Well, there have been some talks, at least earlier this week, in a city work session. Well, let's just take the money out of the reserve fee, backfill all of this money, and then in November, we'll see if the fee tax goes through, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because if you're betting that that's going to happen, you have to keep in mind that this petition drive in just a couple of weeks garnered over 8,000 signatures. In other words, it was pretty popular for people to put this on the ballot. And considering how fast they got those signatures, probably most of those people that wanted it on the ballot didn't want it to begin with. So regardless, this is going to get ugly, and there will be more to come. According to a new Wallet Hub report, we're number 12. That's right. Oregon is 12th worst in the United States for drug problems. Although when you break it down, it gets worse. Now, the report compared all 50 U.S. states, including Washington, D.C., in 3 categories: drug addictions and usage, law enforcement, and drug health issues and rehab. And in 2 of those categories, Oregon was we're number worst, or among the worst. We'll get to that. So in terms of drug addictions and usage, Oregon ranked 3rd worst in the country. We're number 3. The category looked at the percentages of teens and adults using drugs, overdose rates, and the number of drug laboratories and dump sites. Oregon also didn't do much better for drug health issues in rehab. Yes, we're number 8th worst in the country in that. The category looked at the number of adults who couldn't get treatment for drug addiction, the number of substance abuse treatment facilities, and accessibilities to narcotics and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Oh, here's another one. We're number 9. Oregon is the 9th worst state in dealing with foster care. That, according to a new study by the nonprofit organization Smile Hub, each state was rated based on 19 different metrics. Among Oregon's failures, the state is 41st in the nation for the share of children adopted within 3 years, 35th in high school graduation rates for foster youth, which actually, when you look at it, is not bad, because overall, as far as graduation rates among all students, we're down there about number 45. The Oregon Department of Human Services, by the way, created a new online training program to report child abuse. Oregon law mandates that professionals in healthcare, law enforcement, social work, education fields are what's called mandatory reporters. They have to report child abuse. So the training takes about an hour. It includes identifying the signs of child abuse, the role of personal biases to know when abuse should be reported, and how to file a report. And you can go to the Department of Human Services to take a look at that. So superintendents from Oregon's largest K-12 school districts released a joint sort of propaganda video this week, committing to serve all children and families in response to the federal government possibly withholding federal funds. According to Eugene Interim Superintendent Colt Gill, he said, right now, the federal government is threatening to withhold well over $1 billion per year from Oregon schools. He said these funds come from taxes paid by Oregonians, and they paid for students with disabilities, service in our neediest schools, and breakfast and lunches for students who otherwise may not eat. Consider, by the way, when he says that right now, Oregon's legislature is actually considering changing the law to feed all kids, regardless of need, rich, poor, otherwise. Anyway, Gill and other superintendents stressed the importance to make sure that students feel safe in school, and that they would work and have worked to train their teachers to lawfully protect students from immigration enforcement. Keep in mind that 4J was the first school district in the nation to actually join a lawsuit against the Trump administration over the U.S. Department of Education's so-called Dear Colleagues letter that demanded that schools eliminate prejudicial diversity, equity, inclusion mandates or lose federal Department of Education monies. So we told you about that cyber attack on the Department of Environmental Quality that essentially shut down the DEEQ site, actually shut down their entire computer system for well over a week. Well, now we're learning more about that. It turns out that the agency's IT staff actually warned employees beforehand about the risk of a hack. And it gets a little bit more embarrassing for the DEQ even before that. So the cyber attack, as we reported here, forced the DEQ in Oregon to close all of its vehicle inspection stations. It shut down its networks and its emails for several days this month. The attack is being investigated by the Oregon Department of Administrative Services, so-called Enterprise Information Services. So in an email to DEQ staff that went out on April 8th, now that was a day before the attack, the DEQ informed their staff and other state agencies that DEQ had sent out a press release to subscribers on their email list. And the email that they sent out contained a link to a third-party website. Apparently, that third-party website had been compromised by hackers. Now, they warned about this a day before it happened, that, our email, that link has been hacked. The link was supposed to allow people to register for an upcoming event, but the registration site itself, like I said, had been hacked. If the link, according to that email, if the link is clicked, it takes you to a hijacked website and asks you to verify you're human. That, according to the message from the DEQ. The DEQ further wrote, during this process, it will ask you to run a command on your system that downloads malicious content to your computer and would provide outside entities access to DEQ networks. So, what it appears is though somebody in the DEQ didn't get the memo and did just exactly that. Downloaded, essentially, malware that took over the system. So following the cyber attack that happened late on April 9th, the hacking group Residia later posted files online claiming to be from the agency, which nobody at this point is confirming whether it's true or not. The files include terabytes of data and include sensitive information about DEQ employees. Maybe it is them. Lauren Wirtis, a spokesperson with the DEQ, said the agency also received a message from someone else claiming to have DEQ data, but the Enterprise Information Services said, well, that's a scam. Turns out, and this is kind of interesting, that after you've been hacked, other scammers claim to be your hacker, and then they try to get ransom from you. So it's a scam kind of on top of a scam. Okay, so let's follow up on what's becoming a regular feature, and that is what government agency in Oregon is suing the federal government? Well, Oregon Secretary of State Tobias Reed. He is pushing back against the Trump administration's efforts to actually strengthen election regulations. The president issued an executive order earlier this year that Reed claims will make it harder for people to vote. Among the president's orders, that to register to vote, you have to prove you're a U.S. citizen, and that the ballots must be received by or on Election Day. Neither of those two things are true in Oregon. As a matter of fact, in Oregon, the law was rewritten because Oregon has mail-in ballots. Oh, they can come in for another 10 days after the election. That's okay. And as long as they're postmarked on Election Day, that's all right too. Meaning that most of our elections, you don't know a result until almost a month after the actual votes were taken. Anyway, so Tobias Reed, along with 20 other secretaries of state, filed a lawsuit to stop the executive order. Oregon's largest non-government employer, Intel, is looking at job cuts. The question remains how big of a hit Oregon's 4 Intel facility sites are going to take. A lot of this has been brought on by consistently sliding sales and sliding stock prices. The cuts were alluded to in an email from CEO Lip Bhutan. Several sources, including Bloomberg, say Intel is considering laying off 20% of its workforce. So while that number has not been confirmed or announced by Intel, we do know, according to the email they sent out, they're going to be cutting $1.5 billion in operating expenses in the next year and a half, along with another $2 billion in capital expenditures. So this happens a lot here in the local area, and that is tweakers go out and steal copper. But they figure it's easier just to steal things like copper telephone lines and electric wires. So a man is looking at jail time after a copper theft kind of went upside down, according to Eugene police. According to the police department, officers responded to the area of Bertelsen and Stewart Roads in Eugene for the report of a man who was breaking into an electrical box, and he was pulling wire out of it. And according to reports, he was also drinking from a large bottle of whiskey. Oh, what could go wrong? Police also heard reports the man was pulling wires from telephone poles and that an arc caused the base of one of those phone poles to catch fire. Now, Eugene Springfield Fire actually arrived before police and were able to put the fire out. The man with the large bottle of whiskey was identified as Thomas Logan. who, according to police, quote, appeared agitated and hostile when officers contacted him. Well, yeah, the man's working. Police say there were several telecommunication wires that belonged to CenturyLink that were cut into large chunks hanging from the pole. And despite threats that Logan allegedly made towards officers while holding his large bottle of whiskey, he was arrested without major incident. He's now facing arson and criminal mischief charges. And by the way, the damage to the poles and wires, a cool 10 grand. Well, there's your crazy Oregon news. It is brought to you by none other than the Answer Man, and that would be Sean Sutherland. You got questions about Medicare? You got questions about Medicaid? Well, then you need to ask the Answer Man at Ask Insurance. All right, Rick, get real.